This is Scott the Fix Guy. We have a Frigidaire dryer that is not starting. When you press the start button, you can hear the motor try to start, but it'll either hum or just starts real briefly and then shuts off. So this is probably just due to a dirty motor switch. So we're going to get to that switch and try to clean it. And what we've done so far is unplugged it, and then we pushed in with a paint scraper on the upper right and upper left hand corner about 2 inches in to release 2 clips to hinge the top up, and then we're removing these 2 modular connectors that bring power to the front panel. And then there's usually a zip tie right here that we have to cut and remove, and then there's just 2 Phillips head screws that are holding the front panel on. We come at them from behind. They're about 4 inches down from the top on the left-hand side and right-hand side. If they fall in by accident, it's okay because we're going to take the panel off and we can get them at that point. And then once you get those screws off, you can grab the upper part of the front panel and pull it towards you. You have to use a little bit of force because there's some clips that are holding it on by friction. And then you can lift off the bottom. You bring the panel out to about 45 degrees. You can lift the bottom off of its bottom clips, get that out of the way, and you have really good access to many parts of the machine. We do have to remove the tumbler next though, so that we can get to the motor. So there's a little plastic piece here at the top that we also have to remove with a Phillips head screwdriver. And it's just there to hold the drum in position. It's not a real critical piece. And then we're going to reach down and take the belt off of the idler wheel. This model actually has 2 idler wheels, so it's a little bit harder. What I did is I reached in on either side and I pushed the belt over the rim of just one of the idler wheels to loosen it. The one on this model is what we see in the lower left-hand corner of this diagram. So it actually has 2 idler wheels. Most only have 1, which is a lot easier. You can push in on the idler wheel, pull the idler wheel away from the motor and then pull the belt off of the motor pulley. Once you get it off, you can lift up and it will come off of the rear bearing, and you can pull the tumbler out away from the machine, and that gives you good access to these parts. I'm just going to quickly clean all this lint out of here. I'm going to clean it off of all the surfaces where I can see it, so we worry about this being a fire hazard. And also it tends to clog up the motor and can make the motor overheat a little faster than it should. So I'm just cleaning all the areas I can see, and in particular, it's good to get the motor super clean. I'm using some electrical cleaner now to spray in on the motor, and I'm going to see if that by itself will be enough to allow the motor to move or to start better. But I think I'm going to probably have to clean the motor switch too. I'm removing the electrical modular connector from the motor switch by pulling up on 2 plastic tabs on either side of it. I'm going to clean with my electrical cleaner where these 2 surfaces come together, the male side and the female side. Then I'll put the modular connector back on, and then I'm going to try to make the dryer think that the door is closed and everything's connected again so I can test it. So I'm putting the front panel nearby where it was, and I'm going to hook up the modular connectors for the front panel. Make sure that the dryer door is closed, and then I'm going to plug it back in, and I'll press start. You don't want to run it very long if it does start. You just want to run it for maybe a few seconds just to see if the motor will do better. So I'm turning it on, and I'm noticing I still have a problem where it just doesn't start up as readily as it should, and this usually means you could either replace the motor or the motor start switch, and in some cases you can just clean the motor start switch, and that's why I'm going to try that first because that's very cheap and pretty easy to do. So I unplugged it again, and I'm going to lift up the top cover to give me better access. And then I'm going to remove the modular connector and sped up the film here a little bit, but I'm just removing two Torx head screws that are holding the start switch to the motor, and then I'll pull the switch away from the motor, and then I'm going to open up the plastic case, the two halves, a little bit. You don't have to take it all the way off, but just enough to create some space so I can spray a fair amount of electrical cleaner in there. And the hope is that that'll clean the metal contacts and allow the motor to start better. Sometimes you can actually you don't have to buy a whole new motor, but you can buy a new motor switch. They're a lot cheaper. They're easy to put in. There we go. So we got the case opened or cracked a little bit, and we're spraying a lot of electrical cleaner in there. And again, we're hoping that'll clean the metal contacts. And then we're just going to put it back in. We're going to put the two screws back in. We sped up the film a little bit, get it into position, and we get those screws tightened. Put the modular connector back on, and then we'll put the front panel back nearby where it's supposed to go, hook up those two modular connectors, plug it back in, and then test it. And we'll see if there's any better response, to see if it'll start easily again. A lot of times that will work, and that will save you a lot of money. You don't have to buy a new motor. These motors aren't too expensive. They're usually around $100, and they're pretty easy to put in. But oftentimes people replace the motor when it's really just the motor switch that has failed. Motors tend to last a long time, especially on dryers. The switch does go between two positions with a centrifugal switch that when it spins fast, it changes position, activates another circuit. Sometimes that centrifugal switch gets stuck. I did test that though. I did clean it really well and made sure that it could move back and forth. So I'm putting the modular connector back on. I got the switch on there tight. I'm going to put the front panel back into position. Put the modular connectors on, and I'll plug it in. We'll give it a test. So now when we start, motor fires right up, as it should, and then I'm going to open the door to break the circuit, and I'll try it a few times. And that does start over and over and over, so I know that that did cure the problem. And now all I got to do is just reassemble the dryer. We know that everything's clean inside. We know the motor switch is clean and working. And this dryer is probably 15 years old, and it could go another 5 years. So we're just doing a little more testing of that circuit, make sure it's working, and then we can unplug it and do the reassembly. So I got the tumbler back in, and I've got the belt back onto the motor pulley. I spun it a couple times to make sure it was all set in position. I'm putting this little plastic piece back in that holds the tumbler in position. And now I'll put the front panel down on its clips on the bottom, right, bottom, left. And I'm going to push it in toward the tumbler. I'm going to lift up the tumbler a little bit so it can ride up on the felt front bearing. And I'll push the panel all the way in. I'll put the two Phillips head screws in that hold the front panel on. I got the modular connectors back. I put a new zip tie in to hold it. And I'll just close the top so the two clips can lock into position. And we'll plug it in, make sure it's going to work. So this is the electric version. It's a 220 circuit, 110 for the motor and 110 for the heater. Get it plugged in and go ahead and turn it on. So it starts easily as it should. And that cured the problem. So I hope this has been helpful to you and get yours starting strong again. And please subscribe to our channel when you get a chance. Thanks for watching.